Bob Roth has led Cypress Home Care for 21 years, so he has a lot of history, but he also is really thinking hard about the future, and he knows that in order for our industry to live, that we need to figure out how to provide services with fewer caregivers. He's done some amazing things in Cypress. I think you're really going to enjoy this.
Welcome to the Home Care Heroes and Day Service Stars podcast. If you provide services to keep older or disabled people living at home, then this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Ken Accardi.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Home Care Heroes and Day Service Stars. Today, we have a great guest. His name is Bob Roth. I've actually seen Rob around. I guess I've been in home care for 10 years, and he was there like in maybe the first conference I ever went to. And I think Bob has actually been around more like 30 years, if I read his bio correctly. And we're going to talk about really preparing for the future of home care. It's going to be a great topic for today. So welcome, Bob Roth. How are you?
Hey, Ken, thank you. It's great to join you. And I think the first time I met you was through Tim Rowan. And I think it was one of his conferences. So it was probably every bit of 10 years ago. So I've been in the industry personally 21 years. My family's been in it almost 31 years. My brother Joe ran the business for 10 years, and I've been here at the last 21 years. So
incredible.
Yeah.
So what a tenure and what a legacy. All right, so let's just jump right in. I would say, what we were what we were talking about right before we started recording was you were saying like why it's such a great time to be in home care, but that there's maybe a little tiny problem that we have to solve as a result of this great time in home care. So why don't you just kind of characterize that for everybody?
So let me set the stage and say why it's a great time to be in home care. And it really is about doing the math. And if you do the math and you really take a look at it, the 65-year-old population between now and 2050, and that's in 25 years, is going to double. The 85-year-old population between now and 2025 is going to nearly quadruple. And in order to sustain our population at 335 million in America, every child rearing female needs to have 2.1 children. And right now we're at 1.7 and declining. So the opportunities are boundless, and it's really exciting to be here. But we have really two huge headwinds that are hitting us, and they're hitting us really hard. I don't have to really go into details about workforce, but workforce is one of the biggest challenges we have. And it's surely the numbers. We don't have enough people behind us, as I shared. But also, we have a different work ethic that, we're seeing and trying to develop and trying to get, let's put it this way, under an understanding so we can establish culture. And that is with the Gen Zs. And I don't know if you know it or not, Ken, but the generation behind Gen Z is called Gen A for Gen Alpha. So they're going from Z to A now. So I'm sure after that it'll be Gen B maybe. But, really to get these folks really in tune with the needs of our society and really our communities. But when you really sit down and you really think about it, there's no better time to be in the space because the need is there. We collectively need to figure out how we can reimagine home care to deliver it in a way that is very different from the way we did it yesterday.
I love that. Okay, so I guess we're going to get into some of the things you're doing and some of the things that you think we all should be doing and thinking about. But I guess I'm thinking ahead, and I think and I know because I saw you at a conference recently that, you're doing some really cool things with AI and some technology. But, fundamentally, every home care organization, especially with the prices that people are paying today and that kind of thing, you need to establish trust. And as you're, kind of changing the status quo and looking at new things, what are you doing? I mean, just in general and in light of, the changes that are coming to establish and maintain trust, establish and maintain trust with, existing and potential clients.
Well, I think first, none of us should ever lose sight of the caregivers. And if we have some home health people or hospice people that are listening, clinicians that we're hiring, it's our people first. We can never compromise on that. And as much as maybe, I talked maybe somewhat negatively about this generation coming up, there are some really good people in that generation and beyond. So what we need to do is we need to be mindful of the people that we hire. We cannot at all take any shortcuts and make any exceptions because we all know that one bad review, one bad outcome can bring you down. So the quality of the people you hire and the training that you give them is, and it's imperative because today the cost, as we talked about earlier, is so exorbitantly high. People are expecting when they're paying upwards to $40 an hour that they're going to get concierge type service. So I think that's first and foremost. Second, I really think that people need to really understand that you really need to be establishing yourself as an expert in your community. And being an expert is really important. And it's not an easy thing. I mean, we've been doing it for almost 31 years, and me almost 21 now, or I'm in my 21st year. But establishing yourself as an expert by, sitting on boards, you know, I'm on the Attorney General's task force against senior abuse. I got appointed by our governor to be on the Governor's Advisory Council on Aging. I've been involved with the Alzheimer's Association. I was on their board. So volunteering is really important. And I really encourage people to get involved in their community because once you get involved in your community and people can learn and who you are about the trust that you bring is really important. As far as being an expert, also, I always invite people to do more public relations type activity. I mean, people really love human interest stories. And guess what?
Hmm.
We have some great human interest stories. The clients that we care for have lived incredible lives, and each one of them is like a good book. So, you know what? Creating these human interest stories, whether you have a client that is celebrating their 107th birthday, like we did last month or 2 months ago, or you have a client that may have decided to get married late in life. I mean, whatever those things are that can really attract people, those are great media stories. And guess what? It's free because the media loves human interest stories and it helps put your name out there. The last thing I'll share, and I could talk about this forever, Ken, is that, as far as trust, you need to really establish trust. And it's not so much, calling on the acute and post-acute centers, but working with some of the wealth managers and CPAs and elder law firms and long-term care insurance folks, foundations. Establishing yourself there is really important, especially as the cost of our services have gone up exponentially. I hope that's given your listeners some really good ideas on how to establish trust in your market.
Yeah, I mean, just drilling down on that for a second. So, your company, your family has a 30-year legacy in the industry. You're taking care of prominent folks, large numbers of folks. But let's say that I, just started out and I have, I'm taking care of 30 clients, and I'm very proud of that. I grew from 10, just a couple years ago, but I don't have that long-term reputation. So I think everything you said with the human interest stories and all the positivity and the events and things like that makes sense. But you talked about, I mean, some pretty big appointments like the Alzheimer's committee, the statewide, committees and things like that. Um, if someone is, a little bit more junior in their career, but they want to like start doing that volunteering, what is there more at like the local level? I mean, is there, council on aging? Are there, like what are the kind of places where they could, kind of get their name out there, in the on a more micro scale, I guess, to establish themselves.
It really depends on where they are. I mean, if you're in
Hmm.
a rural community, it's going to be really hard to get involved in some of these, associations, whether it be Parkinson's or Alzheimer's Association. There may not be an area agency in your market. But if you are in those locations, volunteering is certainly a big contribution to, really helping establish yourself. Putting forth the time and having a seat at the table is really important. The other part is, one of the things that we always need to be mindful is of advocacy. And, legislators are out there and they don't quite understand what home care is all about. And, there's an old adage that if you don't have a seat at the table, you might find yourself on the menu. So I think it's really important, whether it be the county, council or the town council or the city or even the state, trying to get involved in them because, if legislation does come up, they'll know who you are, and they will absolutely contact you to get you content and really understand, maybe the position that one might need to take as it relates to caring for an elderly person. But I think first and foremost is really getting out there and volunteering and making yourself, known by the efforts that you're putting in.
Yeah, perfect. I love that. All right, so let's kind of refocus for a minute. So what you've kind of shared is, I mean, the demographic numbers of, today we don't even have enough caregivers to fill,
Right.
um, all of the requests that we have. And then we have, we're doubling the population of people over 65, which I don't think is the important metric, but the one that you said of people over 85 or people over 80. I mean, 65-year-olds are pretty darn healthy and, a lot of cases, but, 80-year-olds, yeah, they're probably to the point where they need care. We're gonna have 4 times as many people over 80. I think I saw statistics said today we have around 12 million. We're gonna go to 50 million people over 80. And I think you used the statistic over 85. Um, so it's not gonna be, the exact same equation where it's like, okay, we just hire more caregivers and that type of thing. There has to be some technology infusion in there. And I guess one thing that you've always, I've heard you speak in conferences, you've always say, hey, you have to keep your finger on the pulse of technology and figure out when it's the right time to apply them. So what kind of advice could you give us in that area?
So on the recipient side, and I'm on the tail end of the baby boomers, so I'm going to tell you, I won't be taking the message very kindly when my daughters tell me, "Hey, Dad, you need a caregiver." And,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't have to tell you, the baby boomers have reshaped all of our communities, reshaped our economy. Um, we are much healthier than the last generation and even the generation before. But you know what? We're living a lot longer, and each of us has our own set of deficits. And we all know that dementia and Parkinson's and neuromuscular disorders are growing quite quite substantially, and part of that's because we're living longer. The other part of it could be environmental or other reasons. But I just want to say, positioning care to a baby boomer or younger, we need to sometimes think about how to position it. And I think positioning it as more of a personal assistant rather
Hmm.
than a caregiver, because the caregiver gives that connotation that someone's invariably doing personal care, whether it be wiping butts and helping someone shower when, you know what, someone like myself just needs somebody to help me stay organized, remind me to take my medications, help me prepare meals and making sure I'm eating my meals, and maybe laundry or transportation. So there's so many things that we do that are so not clinical. So I want people that are listening, it's that mindset. And just know that the mindset of this population that we're in right now, that we are caring for, and it's
Hmm.
crazy having done this for 30, almost 31 years, you know, everything has changed because the demographics of the care recipients are very different. So I want to leave it at that. So talk about technology. Technology for a home care agency it's an imperative today. You and I had a conversation before we started this podcast, and that is that we need to remember that we are in the human business and relationships are everything. I always ask my people when they're talking to a referral partner or somebody out there that's an influencer, did you establish a relationship? And what does that mean? That means, have you established something in common with them? Do you both like the Arizona Diamondbacks? Do you both like dogs? Do you both have children and you talked about children? So it's so important to do that. And I think people lose sight of that. So relationships are really important, but with technology, we can do a lot of stuff that is human, but we can replace it with technology. And what do I mean? There's a lot of repetitive tasks and redundancies that humans do all the time. And they do this and they do it invariably, but it really consumes too much time. And it takes time from having authentic and real relationships with people and contact with humans. So what we've done at Cypress, and I know others have done very similar things. I just came back from Home Care 100. I got introduced to a couple other new innovations that I'm going to think about and bringing on at Cypress. But I'm here to share with you, Ken, and your listeners today. I have saved and I am saving somewhere between 120 and 150 hours a month on my whole recruitment side. So let me explain what we're doing. So Cypress Home Care in its previous iteration prior to 2020, when we were hiring caregivers, we went through the old school way of doing the phone interview, having them come in and interview in person, and then
Mhm.
after interviewing in person, if they really met our requirements or our needs, then what we would do is we would have them come in for orientation. And then the last phase would be to meet with our schedulers, because anyone running a home care company knows that your schedulers are the ones that run your business. They're the ones that they need to know who those caregivers are so that they can take care of my fictitious client, Mrs. Abramson, and they know what Mrs. Abramson's needs are. So the scheduler has the final call. And at Cypress, what we did the last call was you would get handed a drug screen and then you go do your drug screen. We would get the results almost immediately. And then we would
Mhm.
be ready to put you out on a shift. So in the new world we live in today, I have postings on a job on 16 to 18 job boards. You ready for this?
Yeah.
You're going to want to take notes, and your listeners are going to take notes too.
Perfect.
All right. So we list on 16 to 18 job boards every single day. We use automation to change those listings. We use automation
Okay.
to change those listings because anyone that knows if your listing is static, it drops. If it's
Mm.
dynamic and it keeps changing, it keeps rising to the top. So having a dynamic ad is so important. And then we have machines that are actually taking a look at every one of those applications. And we have criteria that are required. Obviously, you need to live in our geo. Obviously, you
Mhm.
need to have experience. Obviously, we all know we get duplicates, especially with Indeed. I got machines that are looking through all of that.
Huh.
And I have a first phase interview, and that's a 10-minute video interview. I've partnered and I've collaborated with a company called Hello Hire that's helped me with this. And what they're doing is they're the ones that are using machine learning, going through all those resumes, or I'm
Mhm.
sorry, applications. We built a Calendly type application so that the recipient of the invitation to interview can choose what time to interview. Now,
Perfect.
ready for this? The interview is only 10 minutes. It's
Huh.
10 minutes long, and I want to know your why. Tell me
Mhm.
why you want to be a caregiver, why you are a caregiver. The average length of that interview is about 4 minutes long. It's never,
Wow.
because one or two things happen. First, we're looking to see how you look. Just like I'm looking at you, Ken, man. You're on the
Mhm.
top of the tower down in downtown Boston. I like the way you look. I hope you like the way I look. I'm
Mhm.
looking
You look
for
great.
someone that makes a great appearance. I don't want someone with a Mike Tyson tattoo and all kinds of piercings all over them and half their head shaved. And my clients who are paying concierge pricing is not going to let you in their house. That's number one. Number two, I get to hear you speak. And if you have a hard time with the English language, that's not going to work either. So I can dismiss you rather quickly, and my HR manager has the authorization to do that and just say, look, this isn't going to be a good fit, but thank you very much. If they pass the eye and hearing test, then we're diving deep into your why and we're wanting to understand. If you pass this one, by the way, the video interview is all transcribed and summarized. And in the summary, we're looking for certain keywords. Obviously, care, we're looking for compassion, we're looking for empathy. All of those things are in that summary that we're looking for. And guess what? Hello Hire also makes a recommendation if they think we should move on or not. You still can override that, but
Yeah.
if you can't pass that, by the way, all that stuff, we have built an API interface with our enterprise software solution. We use Access Care, and
Mhm.
it starts populating a caregiver profile that is inactive, but we start populating that. So once you get past that first interview, the if you get invited to do a second, you also get a text message or an email from us requesting your documents. We're requesting your CPR, first aid, your driver's license, your background check, information we're asking for. We're asking for your fingerprint clearance card. Every single one of the caregivers today have one of these. They have a smartphone
Yep.
and they're uploading it. They're uploading it to that same profile I talked about. When you get to 80% of
Hmm.
the documents uploaded, you're invited for a second interview. Now,
Okay.
the second interview is far more detailed. Now we're finding out what days, what geographies you want to work in, what your experience level is, because we got that on the application. So now we're doing a deeper dive into your dementia experience, your high lift and transfer experience, working with someone with a traumatic brain injury. So we're getting all of that now. And we're really getting to know who that caregiver is. If you pass that test, then you get invited to an orientation. So the first interview is digitally, the second one is digitally, the third one is orientation. The orientation is on ground. We do at least one a week, sometimes two. We try to keep it in small groups. And at the orientation is my recruiting manager that spends all the time with the interviews and stuff. And I have a scheduler there. Sometimes I have two, but I have at least one there. And if she can't make it there for the beginning, at least she'll be there towards the end and get a chance to meet that person. And guess what? The scheduler makes the call. So,
Mm.
so here we are, 5 years later. We had a 4 phase interviewing process: phone call, interview in person, orientation, meet with scheduler. Now we have digital interview, 10-minute, second 20-minute interview, third orientation, and then meet with a scheduler. We still have a 4 phase process, but we took our company, and you ready for this? I know you knew we were on the Honor Care platform. We were on it for 4.5 years. We
Yep.
we came off it January 31st, so we're almost at our 1 year anniversary. And on February 1st, we had 18 caregivers. They were these
Mm.
rapid response caregivers we had because Honor could not fulfill staffing these shifts. So we had our own caregivers.
Mm.
So by the end of September, we had 167 caregivers. And
Wow.
this method helped us. Now, I spoke at the very beginning of our dialogue here today, and I talked about how we're saving 120 to 150 hours. How are we doing this? Well, not only the fact that the machine stuff is taking a look at all those applicants, not only the fact that the machine is actually going ahead and summarizing and transcribing those interviews. The other thing that we're doing is all that documentation. It used to take my team so much time to scan, whether it be a license, first aid, we're scanning that and moving those files up to the employee file. We don't have to do that anymore. The machines do all that. So we're much more efficient, and we're working on such smaller margins because of the cost being so high. So, we've embraced innovation like nobody's business. So the caregiver piece and the caregiver acquisition piece, I talk about the funnel, bringing caregivers in. It was full of a lot of friction. In the old school, and many of people might be listening here today, it used to take me 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks, before I could bring a caregiver on. When you talk about background checks and all the stuff that needs to, I can get caregivers now on in 4 to 5 days by getting them
Mm.
through this funnel with the least amount of friction. So, and good quality caregivers. So I want to go back to when you said trust. I mean,
Right.
you cannot compromise trust. I mean, you need to hire the best. And one thing your audience needs to remember, when you see that person on that screen for the first time and you see them in person, that's the best they're going to look. And if you're not
Mm.
happy with the way they look, then just know that that's probably someone you don't want to hire.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I love the fact that, here we are, we're talking about, modern technology and artificial intelligence, and you're not doing it in a way that is dehumanizing what you're doing and in your approach. As a matter of fact, what you're doing is you're taking away the mundane, repetitive tasks, as you said, that were taking a lot of your time and preventing you from having that human interaction. You're actually getting, more human interaction, because it's not like you guys aren't working that 120 to 150 hours a week. You're just reapplying that 120 to 150 hours a week to, do more of the things we talked about in the beginning, establishing those personal human relationships and, and being able to go into that orientation day where, you're really there and you're committed to meeting those people and really making a great call and all that kind of thing. I think that's wonderful. Now, having said that, I mean, you kind of downplay yourself, but I mean, you are getting the, upwards of $40 clients. You can afford to hire people who have the experience with traumatic brain injury and have the experience with, various things. And, so I'd imagine that a lot of the candidates you're seeing have, been there and done that before and that sort of thing. And, and even if you're taking somebody who uh, hasn't had the formal experience, you're probably looking definitely for the fact that they've provided care for a family caregiver and those types of things. So I'm sure that you're doing all that well. But I guess like in this big question of we do have a future where we're going to have, let's say, let's take the above 80-year-old folks where there's going to be 4 times the number of people to hire, and there's this declining, population of the U.S. in general, but of, people who are going to be of caregiver age and that sort of thing. Um, I could definitely see the efficiency in hiring, and that keeps you ahead of the game. But like, do you see any, technologies that are, going to be able to have you care for multiple people with fewer people, or maybe, some sensing technologies in the home, or like what are your thoughts on any of those types of approaches looking forward?
So first and foremost, I think it's important for us to remember, especially us small home care agencies, in order to innovate, we have to collaborate. Yeah, I mentioned the company Hello Hired that's helping me with the digital interviews and the summaries and exporting and going through all those applications. I also have a partnership with a company called Home Care Pro, and I was talking about the data, all that information that's coming through, and we're uploading it. You know, I think it's important for us to find collaborating partners that really help us deliver and help us expand the care that we're doing. So there are a couple things that we're doing really differently, Ken. And that
Hmm.
is first and foremost, every single one of the phone calls that comes in now today, and this is evolving right now. I'll have this thing finalized before we start Q2 here in this year, but the beginning phase is already working. So I am transcribing and summarizing every single inbound and outbound call for us. Any intake that comes in, kind of like what we're doing on the interviewing side. And it's actually the technology that we're using is enabling us to, you know, begin a care plan before the care coordinator goes out into the home. We're
Hmm.
using that automation again to eliminate redundancies, repetitive tasks, but also to get it really clear. I mean, the humans make mistakes. Humans aren't able to, 100% maybe transcribe what the client or prospective client is saying. So we're able to capture everything from that phone call. The second phase that we're doing, so we're beginning a preliminary plan, and my care coordinators get that right now, and they augment that. But we're working with a company now, right now, to utilize our devices when we go into the home and have the device actually be listening. We're going to ask for permission from the client to be able to have that and turn it on, and be able to turn it on and be able to have that session transcribed and building that care plan. Don't get me wrong, there's going to be human intervention on doing this. And I'm suspecting at the end of the day, we'll have about 70 to 80% of it right. And then
Hmm.
my care coordinators will be able to tweak it and evolve it. The thing about it is when we go into the home, Ken, and I can tell you from experience doing this work, when I used to do it on paper, there were 16 pieces of paper that I had to have the client sign. I had to
Hmm.
fill it in, and I would be in on a client's homes on average about an hour and 15 or an hour and 20 minutes. Sometimes it would be less, sometimes it'd be more. But half the time they'd be looking at the top of my head. And I want to go back to really talking about being intentional, being authentic and being real and being, relational in the way we do our business. So this affords us that opportunity. It affords us the opportunity to capture everything. And certainly today, a lot of times we go into the homes and they have not made their final decision yet. They're interviewing other home care companies. And if you're able to look at them in their eyes and you're able to be intentional with them. How cool is that? So I wanted
Yeah.
to take that piece first. So we also partner with a company called Sensei AI. So Sensei
Hmm.
AI has these virtual care assistants that we install in the home. Because care now is so expensive, people are trying to figure out how to do more with less. And how do we establish that doing more with less? Well, there are some clients that may be able to sleep through the night that we really don't need to provide care during the non-day parts, but day part is something that's really important.
Hmm.
My family has invested in this. It's cost us a lot of money. I'm talking right now, we're 2 years into it, and we probably have 50 or 60K into it. But
Mm.
what we do is we offer this to our clients for free. We say, look, we know our cost of our services are really high, but and I know you want to do more with less, but we're going to install this in the home. It is HIPAA compliant, it's PHI compliant, it is listening, and it is using artificial intelligence to discern changes in one's condition. So if somebody, is frequently going to the bathroom, an alert is sent and possible UTI, we need to intervene. If someone's gait changes, yes, these virtual care assistants can hear their footsteps and can hear their gait changing. We're going to get an alert. God forbid someone falls. We've had that happen and nobody's there because care's
Right.
not there 24/7. And we can respond. So it's innovations like that. So the last piece I'll share with you is we're reimagining care. Now we're providing care in communities. I was not that big a home care agency in communities. I mean,
Hmm.
we never went after these CCRCs. And for our listeners, they may not know what CCRC stands for, but it's continuing care retirement communities. And in those communities, you have independent living, you have assisted living, you have a skilled nursing, and you have, lastly, memory care in a lot of these locations.
Hmm.
Every executive director will tell you today, the ones that have been around for a long time, will tell you that people that are admitting into their independent living side are at a much higher acuity level than they've ever been before. They all have deficits. They're waiting too long.
Hmm.
And
Mm.
also just know that 70% or more are solo aging. They're widows or widowers, or maybe they never got married. So
Mm.
you have a lot of solo agers that are going to these communities. The other thing you need to know is that's the part of these CCRCs that they make the most money. They don't have to provide a whole lot of services to them. There's
Right.
some housekeeping, food service, and that's really about it. They're not providing any care. So today they're accepting more of these people, and they'll tell you one of the biggest challenges they have is I had one executive director refer to all these independent caregivers that come into their communities as fleas. The fleas, these independent contractors, they are not bonded and insured. They're not vetted
Mm.
on check. They don't have workers' comp. And they, meaning the executive directors, feel like they're at risk every single day because every one of those residents in their community is a vulnerable adult. And liability will definitely fall on them if something bad were to happen and they can't really vet them out. So why not
Right.
partner with a home care agency like ours? So what we're doing now is we're doing on-demand fractional care and we're doing care by the
Perfect.
in the
I
old
love it.
paradigm we used to live in, we would try to get at least 4 hours of care. That was a minimum for caregivers to make it worth their time. That's too hard today. These people that live in these communities don't necessarily need 4 hours all at once. They may only need an hour in the morning and a half an hour in the evening, or they may just need transportation to the doctor's appointment. Or many of them have really poor hygiene because they're scared to take a shower or bath by themselves. God forbid something were to happen. We'll send a caregiver up to do a standby assist or just be in the apartment or condo to be there to be supportive of them. So we have to reimagine care. I know I went on probably a lot longer than you were expecting, but these are the innovations that we need to do to be able to keep up with the demand. The demand's not going to change. We have to change. If we stay static, we're going to be obsolete.
All right. Well, what a great note to close on. And I guess, I mean, just to summarize, we've really hit a lot of ground. I mean, we talked about technology, but keeping it human, getting the best caregivers. I mean, so many of the things, and then just redefining models of care. I love the idea of, being able to, not have just one person providing for one, for one caregiver providing for one client in one home at a time. I mean, when you're able to do this, and I guess maybe an evolution of that would be, proximate neighbors. It's like, okay, it's easier in a CCRC when they're all there, but if you could, deploy a caregiver who is dealing with multiple people in the neighborhood, then that's a way of having one caregiver, work with, multiple clients and kind of grow your base and provide for the needs. And so really, this has been very, very eye-opening. I think you guys are doing some very innovative things. I did know at one point, I think I saw a video that you had moved to the Honor platform, and I wasn't aware that you had moved off and that you rebuilt, but it sounds like you've rebuilt, and in 1 year you've had incredible growth, and you've really also put together the back office that you've really dreamed of. And so kudos to you on that, and thank you so much for being here on Home Care Heroes and Day Service Stars.
I just want to leave your listeners with this. It's collaboration that's going to really solve for the future. It's collaborating with other home care agencies, but it's collaborating with people like Ankota Software too. I mean, these other partners I talked about, I mean, we can't do what we do without partnerships like with you and others that are out there. That's the only way we're going to get through this, especially small companies like us who, really up against these big franchisors that have a lot of money that they can throw out and do a lot of, really fancy marketing and stuff. But, for us, we need to think smarter. We need to think what the future is going to look like. And we need to make sure that we understand that what's new today more than likely will be old tomorrow. So we've got to be on top of our game. Ken, thank you for the opportunity. It was great to see you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
You bet.
Thanks for joining us today on the Home Care Heroes and Day Service Stars podcast, produced by Ankota. You can listen to back episodes by visiting 4homecareheroes.com. That's the number 4, then the words homecareheroes.com.